Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Well, it is Thursday, and we're kind of coming into an interesting intersection in the markets. So things have been pretty dovish lately, and the S&P 500 has been taken off. Last night, they did make some changes to the BTFP program, so they basically eliminated the possibility for these banks to do arbitrage with it that they were doing. And they confirmed that the program will end in March. Meanwhile, we have the Bank of Japan kind of sounding a little hawkish, and they may actually raise rates before the Federal Reserve starts taking rates down. So we have a situation here where we could see rates rise again. And you can see here today we are about a basis point higher than we were yesterday. Okay. Also, momentum could be coming into play here. So if we come over to the charts, we'll look at the daily. You can see that we have indeed breached some of these like average true range metrics and so forth that a lot of CTA strategies utilize for their signals. So we may be getting some people coming in short here, but there's also probably going to be mean reversion, and how that all sorts out, I don't know. But just from the looks of it so far, we didn't actually see a lot of volume come in on the open, but it is to the downside. Okay, so keep that in. It might come. Okay, and we'll just look at it from the volume profile there. It's been pretty quiet overnight after it dropped yesterday, so I'm not seeing many people like jump on board it yet. Okay. Also, here is the S&P 500. Took a pullback. They're still doing okay, still above 4,900. Oil is on a slow upturn. Gold and silver, they're doing their thing. Silver seems like it's okay now, and copper holding those gains from the day before. Here's the Japanese yen. You can see, I mean, it's not like a big deal yet, but you're kind of starting to see like maybe the Japanese yen is going to turn up. And if it does, if the Japanese yen starts to uptrend, that could be a problem for our markets. Okay. Then we've got Bitcoin. Bitcoin's still hovering just above 40K. Okay, now we do have some news. We do have today, at the bottom of the hour, U.S. initial jobless claims and U.S. GDP quarter-over-quarter advance. So there's a couple of really important data. So that's why, you know, if there is going to be like momentum and things like that, they might be waiting for that data to come out. Also, we do have, let's see here. Kansas City Fed later, 4-week bill auction, 7-year note auction. That's awfully important. And the press conference. Yes, that's right. ECB press conference. So what was? We did have the ECB come out, right? 15 minutes ago. Yeah. But GWE says ECB unchanged. ECB keeps rates unchanged, sees declining trend in inflation, continuing press conference live feed. So the narrative that we get out of the ECB is probably also going to be important. You know, I was kind of hoping, I kind of forgot about the ECB, so I was hoping maybe we would get some good trends today, but the ECB kind of puts a kibosh on that because one, they're going to wait a little bit for until they see the press conference. And then when you do get moves off the press conference, those are often like real quick and difficult for us to jump on. So I might not do anything. Oh yes. So I was checking Rumble yesterday and I'd seen that they had kind of adjusted their live streaming stuff. So I was going to try live streaming over on Rumble. Let's see here. If I start, well, it starts. Let's see. Let me come over to Rumble and see if it shows up. Yes, it's totally working. It was so easy to get it to work too. That's cool. Okay, well, we'll see if anybody on Rumble pops in and watches. All right, so here we got the news coming in. About 30 seconds. They are pulling pretty dramatically for this. Guess if I was going to take a bet, it would be on the downside, but that's just because of the risk reward. I think that like there's more possibility of downside at this juncture. It has nothing to do with the probability of what the actual news is going to be, so probably not a very good bet, right? Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to start with initial claims was 214 versus 200, so slightly higher than expected. Oh, U.S. GDP quarter over quarter advanced 3.3 versus an expected 2. That's a sell for sure. Come on, come on. So they sold it pretty hard, but it did pretty much revert all the way back very quickly. Okay. Ooh, what? Dude, if they've reached the high, that's going to be like, what? So you sorted your jigsaw out and just don't use the bridge anymore? Oh dear. Well, I guess if you have two connections, you can just connect Jigsaw directly to one and NinjaTrader directly to one. Or not use Jigsaw, or sorry, not use NinjaTrader, or not use CQG, or one of the other. So this is interesting. Core PCE prices advance was in line with expectations at 2% versus 2%. So I'm trying to read, like, why might they actually be buying this up and reaching the high? So I'm not quite sure. That seems a little off to me, but especially considering like how hard they sold it. But it looks like I'm gonna get stopped out here, man. Okay, I'm 24 and I have a lot of cash. Should I have a traditional IRA or should I explore a Roth? Okay, so I think for the IRA that it makes a lot of sense to use the Roth IRA, especially for a young guy. But the thing that kind of matters, I mean, the traditional way of thinking about it is that a traditional IRA is tax deductible, and so it's pre-tax, and the Roth IRA is post-tax. So if you believe that in the future, when you are taking your IRA distributions, that you will be making more money than you are today, then you should do the Roth because your tax rate will be higher in the future, right? But there are also, because you're a young person, I think there are also other benefits to using the Roth IRA. So for instance, if you decide that you need the money, you can take the money out of the Roth IRA and you just have to pay the taxes on it. If you want to buy a home, you can use the Roth IRA for a first-time home buyer. If you have medical expenses, you can use the Roth IRA for your medical expenses, even for school or for your kids' school, without paying a penalty. So for most people, doing the Roth IRA makes a lot of sense. But you can do the traditional IRA. It will be deducted from your taxes. And then the key thing that you need to do there then is that that puts more money into your pocket each month or each year or whatever. That extra money that you put, you also need to make sure that that gets invested too. Otherwise, the benefit of the traditional IRA isn't worth it, right? Well, they did kind of kiss the high and bounce off of it real quickly. I was thinking in this situation that I could just take the short, but it's not panning out on my sim trade, so I'm not going to switch over to my live trade and start doing live. U.S. initial jobless claims 214 versus 200, so that's better than expected. That's hawkish. GDP quarter-over-quarter advance through spot 3 versus 2%. That's much higher than expected. U.S. durable goods 0 versus 1.5. That could be, that's one thing that seems kind of deflationary. Core durable goods spot 6 versus spot 2. Higher than expected. PCE prices in line. I don't see why they would buy it off of it being in line, but that is slightly dovish. So I don't know. We still got a few minutes before the ECB press conference. Well, I'm going to say I don't believe in this trade anymore, and I'm going to puke it. Minus 500. Minimize the damage. Now it'll reverse, yeah, maybe. Because I have to turn my news squawk off so that they don't talk over the ECB press conference. I don't know. I really kind of think that it will reverse, honestly. Like, part of me wanted to stay in that trade that, like, it will actually flip back down. But I clearly don't understand what's going on here. The CTAs are... Well, I don't know if the CTAs are getting involved yet, to be honest with you. I think that was all just the reaction off of the news. I suppose it is possible that the mean reversion traders came in and took the opposite side of the trade despite, you know, the move down and everything. That's a real possibility. I do see that the Japanese yen moved up. I don't know. So let's just kind of let it do its thing for a little while. And, well, I don't like taking trades during the ECB. I guess on sim trades, I probably could. But, you know, let's reassess after the press conference. Well, so they're continuing up a little bit. So I guess I'm glad that I did that. This is very much not going the way that I was hoping. The press conference will be in like 7 minutes. The live stream has started, but they haven't like actually come out on stage or anything. By the way, today is the first day that I'm streaming on Rumble just to try it out. So if you're out there on Rumble, make sure you say hi. That'll give me a good idea if this is actually working and if there's actually people over there. Could just be robots, or it could just be me, or it could just be all of my guys on YouTube deciding to watch it on both places. That could happen too. Let's get real. You know, it was funny because remember yesterday we were kind of talking about like, well, I think that YouTube is like the best social media platform in terms of a lot of these things, but I'm still really dissatisfied with it. And then it was like, well, the competition to YouTube is Rumble. Not that I'm like need to leave YouTube or anything, but I did like set up auto syndication over there. Nobody watches the videos, but it does automatically publish the videos over on Rumble too. So just go check it out. And when I checked it out this time, it was, oh, they've got the streaming and they got a really easy setup now. So I was able to set it up to stream on Rumble in less than like 5 minutes. The future is Pornhub streaming. I mean, is that actually, can you actually do that now? You know, that reminds me, there was this guy on Pornhub, I think it was, that like his whole thing was setting something up that seemed like a porno scenario, but then nothing ever happens. It's all just completely clean, family-friendly content. And he was like doing really well with it. I wonder what happened with that guy. Math tutor posted math videos there. Well, their company that owns them, they've been having some issues too, haven't they? I can't, you know, getting into some stuff that it's been such a long time and I forget. Okay, so what advantage does Rumble have? I don't know if it has one, to be honest with you. Well, the advantage that Rumble has is that I can say whatever I want without having to be afraid that YouTube could potentially throttle me. Uzi says Rumble's kind of terrible, to be honest. Well, so my feeling on Rumble, I haven't tried it on mobile. Do they have a mobile application? I watched like the Republican debates on Rumble through the web browser on my TV. And it worked. Oh, no, actually, I used it through the TV application. And it worked. It was okay. I didn't have any problems with it. But when I go to the Rumble front page, I don't see tons of videos that I want to watch. You know? Like, the issue that Rumble has right now is that all of their content is political. It's kind of funny. I make financial and political content, but I don't like to watch other people's financial and political content. And so when I go to Rumble, it's all politics stuff, and I'm like, yeah. I should probably, you know, check out Sex and Hammer. I haven't seen him in a while. He was always entertaining. He doesn't really post on YouTube anymore, does he? STYX. STYX. Just Rumble, right? There we are. There we are. Yes, I'll follow him. I'll follow you. Why not back to Twitch? I remember when I first started watching you on Twitch. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I could do it on Twitch too. You know, so part of the reason why It's kind of funny to be talking about this stuff again, because we used to talk about it a lot, and I was kind of happy to not talk about it. But part of the problem that I had on Twitch was that the people that came over that were watching specifically on Twitch didn't really add to the stream. It was like anybody that discovered it through Twitch was like, oh, I'll just go watch it on YouTube. There are some things about Twitch that I can do over there that I think would kind of help the stream, but not too big. It wouldn't change the stream too big. So it's that part is, and you don't really get discoverability on Twitch. That's the other thing. I think that if I had come in and said, I'm only going to stream on Twitch and not on YouTube, and I had put all of my effort into my Twitch stream, that maybe I would have gotten bigger. Because there was some other people on that platform in the whole day trading thing that like really took off there, right? And with YouTube, when I got those kinds of bumps, they didn't stay around. Because it was only because of the YouTube algorithm sending me the stuff, and then when the YouTube algorithm stopped sending the stuff, then you didn't get more people, right? Whereas, hopefully, with the live stream and the community, you get people that are there all the time and they come in, but we don't really know that. And this is kind of like the larger issue. So, like, what do we have on Rumble right now? We have 3. At one point, there was 5 watching on Rumble. And, like, one of them is you. One of them is me. So, like, these platforms are not offering enough discoverability for the average creator to really entice them into coming over. And that's the biggest problem that I've seen with some of these competing platforms. As much as I hate YouTube, I still get people sent to the channel on a regular basis through the algorithm and search and stuff like that. So I just like that I'm able to stream to 2 separate services without any problems. Found you by accident? So by accident, like, you just happened to come across my channel and then the stream was live and you joined it? Or was it like YouTube recommended the page? Because I think the majority of my audience, the stream was recommended to them. Oh yeah, the conference is starting. They're taking pictures. Travis says YouTube recommended it. Yeah. And it's tough because what I'm trying to do is, not everybody's going to be interested in it. It's funny because I can see it sometimes where I'm like, well, if I just kind of told everybody, hey, you can make so much money doing this, just do what I do. Yeah, I probably could have a really big YouTube channel. Oh, come on.
Good afternoon and welcome to the ECB press conference. Joined on stage here by President
There we go.
Lagarde
You can hear me okay?
and Vice President De Guindos. We are also
Back when you used to trade.
the video link to some journalists outside of here. So if you turn on your cameras and your microphones when you speak, please do so when you take the floor. By the way, my name is Wolfgang Preußel, and with that, I would like to hand over to President Lagarde.
I think I was looking for TA.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang, and Happy New Year to all of you. We haven't seen each other since the beginning of the year, and I know it's getting late, but still time to do so. The Vice President and I welcome you to our first press conference in 24. The Governing Council today decided to keep the 3 key ECB interest rates unchanged.
You want to see the video?
Has broadly
That's fair
confirmed our previous assessment of medium-term inflation outlook. Aside from an energy-related upward base effect on headline inflation, the declining trend in underlying inflation has continued, and our past interest rate increases keep being transmitted forcefully into financing conditions. Tight financing conditions are dampening demand and this is helping to push down inflation. We are determined to ensure that inflation returns to our 2% medium-term target in a timely manner. Based on our current assessment, we consider that the key ECB interest rates are at level that, maintained for a sufficiently long duration, will make a substantial contribution to this goal.
Can install the NVIDIA drivers?
We'll ensure that our policy rates...
If you don't have like a 1660 or like a 3000 series or a 4000 series card, I think it's time to upgrade.
Determining the appropriate level and duration of restriction.
Yeah, 970.
In particular, our interest rate decisions will be based on our assessment of the inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data, the dynamics of underlying inflation.
Because like the whole thing is that the only value that the video card really provides us as traders. I mean, you can do data science with it, but most of y'all aren't doing that, right? So then the only other advantage is the video encoding, and you have to get to the 20 series and above to get the video encoding.
Looking at the economic activity, the euro area economy is likely to have stagnated in the final quarter of 23. The incoming data...
Oh, did you take a short up there?
...in the near term. However...
I would still like to have a short on, but I really hate having positions on when during the press conferences.
Ahead. The labor market has remained robust. The unemployment rate at 6.4%.
Suppose I could try like this kind of more scalpy trade.
Since the start of the euro, and more workers have entered the labor force.
Oh, that's not bad.
At the same time, demand for labor is...
Well, I'm definitely seeing the volume come in short in CB, so...
Governments should continue to roll back energy-related support measures to avoid driving up medium-term inflation pressures. Fiscal and structural policies should be designed to make our economy more productive and competitive, as well as to gradually bring down high public debt ratios. Structural reforms and investments to enhance the euro area's supply capacity, which would be supported by the full implementation of the Next Generation EU programme, can help reduce price pressure in the medium term while supporting the green and digital transitions. Following the recent ECOFIN Council agreement on the reform of the EU's economic governance framework, the legislative process should be concluded swiftly so that the new rules can be implemented without delay. Moreover, it is imperative that progress towards Capital Markets Union and the completion of Banking Union be accelerated. Turning now to inflation. Inflation rose to 2.9% in December, as some of the past fiscal measures to cushion the impact of high energy prices dropped out of the annual inflation rate, although the rebound was weaker than expected. Aside from this base effect, the overall trend of declining inflation continued. Food price inflation dropped to 6.1% in December. Inflation, excluding...
It's like that trade stopped out almost right away, huh?
Declined again to 3.4%.
Here's the thing, I really wish that I had something that was really effective at telling me that like that's a good spot to take it, but I don't typically see that. I can see that's a good spot to take it off, to take profits, but not to enter.
Further over the course of this year, as the effects of past energy shocks, supply bottlenecks, and the post-pandemic reopening of the economy fade, and tighter monetary policy continues to weigh on demand. Almost all measures of underlying inflation declined further in December. The elevated rate of wage increases and falling labor productivity are keeping domestic price pressures high.
And seeing some shifts in the yield curve here.
At the same time, lower unit profits have started to moderate the inflationary effect of rising unit labor costs. Measures of shorter-term inflation expectations have come down markedly, while those of longer-term inflation expectations mostly stand around 2%. Looking now at the risk assessment. The risks to economic growth remain tilted to the downside. Growth could be lower if the effects of monetary policy turn out stronger than expected. A weaker world economy or a further slowdown in global trade would also weigh on euro area growth. Russia's unjustified war against Ukraine.
I think another issue that I have in a situation like this is that the way that the Europeans tend to interpret these things seems to be different from my own.
Becoming less confident about the future and global trade being disrupted. Growth could be higher if rising real incomes mean spending increases by more than anticipated, or if the world economy...
I'm still sitting here like, how can you have GDP 1.2% higher than expected and be up?
The heightened geopolitical tensions, especially in the Middle East, which could push energy prices...
That makes no sense to me.
...higher in the near term and hamper global trade. Inflation could also turn out higher than anticipated if wages increase by more than expected, or
that's what makes markets not
prove more resilient. By contrast, inflation may surprise on the downside if monetary policy dampens demand.
The issue is that I don't think that an outcome like that in this particular situation is random.
Moreover,
I think that there is a factor that made it move that way, and I just don't know what it is. It could be mean reversion trading, though. I think that's probably my best guess.
For oil and gas prices.
Yeah, somebody had to trade it to make it do that, and why did they do that?
Conditions now. Market interest rates have moved broadly sideways since our last meeting. Our restrictive monetary policy continues to transmit strongly into broader financing conditions. Lending rates on business loans declined slightly to 5.2% in November, while mortgage rates increased further to 4%. High borrowing rates, with the associated cutbacks in investment plans and house purchases, led to a further drop in credit demand in the fourth quarter, as reported in our latest bank lending survey.
Let's stop making a case for trading unless we want to wake Uzi's wrath.
For loans to firms and households.
Well, we're not making a very good case for trading this. That's kind of why I was expecting to pull my live account out today, and it looks like I won't be.
Against this background,
like 2 quick losers like that is not a very good sign for me to make good trades today, right?
Loans to firms stagnated in
November, we might continue to mess with it on Sim.
Earlier, contracting in October, as the monthly flow.
Let's let the ECB press conference finish, though.
Loans to households grew at a subdued annual rate of 0.5%.
You know, I don't feel like it's Uzi's wrath either.
The 3 key ECB
I just feel that it's a little bit unfocused. Do you know what I mean?
To ensure that inflation returns to our 2% medium-term target.
I think really when we're having that discussion, really the goal of that discussion should be how should we shift the content that we have here on the live stream?
Will make a substantial contribution to this goal.
We've done, I'm not going to say
will ensure that our policy rates will be
that day trading is completely useless. We've had some success with it and everything, right? But I feel like I've kind of reached a kind of like a ceiling there to some extent, and that it's time to start making some shifts so that we can continue to progress.
To ensure that inflation returns to our medium-term target and to preserve the smooth functioning of monetary.
But that doesn't mean stop streaming, right?
We're now ready to take your questions.
Thank you.
So far, it means talk more politics, and that's not really what I want to have happen, right?
Mark, please.
Yes, thanks a lot for taking my questions. The first one is on interest rates. Last week in Davos, you said that you consider it likely that interest rates will be cut in summer, after some of your colleagues already had given similar
Depends on what your idea of breakfast is, yeah.
Did you discuss the possible timing of an interest rate?
But that's why we're talking about it, is because I want to know what the guys that have been with me the whole way are most interested in doing. It kind of feels like that you guys are most interested in continuing to do what we've been doing, though, which is okay.
And the second one is on geopolitical risk and in particular the Red Sea shipping turmoil. You recently mentioned a possible comeback of supply bottlenecks as a key risk factor for inflation. You also mentioned it today.
Because what I could do is I could just come back with more money so that I can take more kind of market making type of trades, and that would help me tread water a little bit better.
More concerned about it, and how would you react if risks materialize? For example, if inflation picks up again due to higher shipping costs or new supply chain disruptions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your series of questions. Well, first of all, the consensus around the table of the Governing Council was that it was premature to discuss rate cuts. In addition to that, I typically stand by
If it
my
ain't
comments.
broke.
So the comments I made to your
Your banner makes people believe you're trading, but when they come and they see you mostly talking about random
I
stuff.
certainly stand by them.
Well,
So
but
exactly characterize
this kind of comes back to this thing that's like, I think it's so funny that people want you to be in a trade all the time, because
that I have said.
there's not a trade all the time, you know?
One other thing which was
I think that if you're doing this right, that
consensus around
most of the time you'll be sitting on your
to be
hands.
data dependent. So rather than being fixated on any kind of particular calendar, which would be being date dependent, we reaffirmed our data dependency. And I have flagged in the course of the monetary policy statement some of the areas that we will be
Well, I definitely took more trades before,
course of
but
the next few months.
I started performing better when I took less trades.
The issue of the supply bottlenecks. I would be maybe a bit cautious about the use of supply bottlenecks because it was very much associated with the consequences of COVID and the multifaceted bottlenecks that we observed, both in shipping, in port handling, in dispatching of containers.
You want to see an example of a market maker type
very
of trade.
sizable disruption in the whole logistics.
Well, yeah, you're not going to see that
But
because
we
to really
also
do it
very
these
carefully,
days, you need to
we
be a
are
robot.
seeing what you are all observing, which is that shipping costs are increasing, delivery delays
Can be
are
what?
increasing,
First,
and while
smarter,
we know that there is more
or
shipping
cheat.
capacity than
I'm not
there
going to
was,
cheat,
in
and
2020 and
I'm not as fast as a robot, so my only choice is to be smarter.
costs and fees are increasing. Now, it does not, I think most observers agree to say that it has a moderate impact. The percentage of the water shipping freight is a little north of 1.5%
lucky.
of
You could be-
cost
I think we could add lucky to it,
But we are
but I don't think that I'm lucky.
and look attentively to
Seems pretty clear that I am
here, and I think
very much
whether you look at
unlucky.
the IMF, the OECD,
Like,
or other
if somebody was, really powerful market maker in the treasury market was specifically trying to like ruin my trading, I don't know how what they would
it's
change
a question of
compared to what the market does.
that we alluded
It will always catch me off guard at the like exactly the right time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Annette Weisbach of CNBC. Annette, please.
Thank you very much. President Lagarde.
Speedy
I
servers
have a
could do
question
that.
on, because you're always referring to wage data.
We could do robots, but if I'm gonna have a robot, I'm not.
So what are you
gonna show it to you
actually
guys.
looking at? And is there a cutoff point in the coming year? Because clearly we can look at wage
So
data
then you
throughout
just
the
mess
year.
with it.
And then I would like to again bring you back to that before summer decision thing.
An informed trade, I can stream an informed trade because I know that like it would be dumb to try and if I'm doing it right, you would be dumb to try and trade against it, right?
Would that mean would give you more ground?
But that's why I have to be really selective. as of late, over the last month, I think that I have not been selective enough.
So thank you for your question on wage, because as you have noted, it is an item that we're going to look at and that we have looked at very carefully, as we are also looking very carefully at profit unit and the link between labor unit and profit unit, which was one of the key assumptions we had under our baseline. I'll remind you that the baseline we had was that wage increases would gradually over the course of time be absorbed by a slight reduction, gradual reduction of profit unit, and that's exactly what we are seeing.
Yes, I was quoting margin call.
Said that
yes.
Wage indicators are backward-looking, and yes, there is a whole battery of backward-looking indicator. For instance, the latest, I think it's the per compensation employee data that is available, dates back to October. So what we have in addition to that is indices.
Over the last
over the course of time,
few days, I've kind of been thinking about something that we had talked about before, which is that we should talk about individual stocks more.
Which is the wage tracker.
I think that we could do that.
Receives
We could spend a little bit more time researching individual
any
markets.
change to negotiated agreements in particular, and we receive that on a constant basis.
I usually forget to bring it up, to be honest.
In relation to wage,
It's like, oh, we could do this and this, and then I forget to do it.
Tightness of the labor market.
I'm so much a creature of habit.
Which
That's the thing. If we do make a change, it'll be difficult for me
advertised,
to adjust like the way that I do things to account for that change.
That informs about the tension of the labor market, and of course is telling us a little bit where we are heading in terms of that tightness, which itself
Yeah, it's actually a really good idea.
a position of strength in the negotiation for one party or the other. And we are seeing...
For that date, I have to go to TradingView.
At high level.
Well, while I'm at it, how has DWAC been doing? Do you see the craziness in DWAC?
Which is...
Oh, jeez. Well, they did come back down, though.
Monetary policy statement. And indeed, we are seeing also a slight reduction of the volume.
It kind of came back on my radar when this day happened, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? But apparently they think that if Donald Trump wins the election, that's really good for DWAC, and I'm like, well...
We do that with the National Center.
I mean, if he wins the Republican primary, and I'm like, well, we've kind of known for a long time that he'll win the primary, so I don't understand why that would be a reason to buy now. But whatever. Whatever.
It's not elusive, because really we're trying to pin it down.
Doesn't have to be rational. That's why they're buying it.
From multiple angles to make sure that we are as accurate and as up to date as we can. Being forward-looking is not an easy one for wages.
So Tesla...
Just to give you an idea, I think it's
been pummeled today pretty bad.
Of the employees covered by our wage tracker, which have had their employment contract terminated in December, not terminated, but probably renewed without new terms of.
For me to trade stocks, I would have to save up a bit more money.
There is, and so the 40% include those whose terms and conditions have expired and must be renewed at the end of December, and those for which the same will happen in the first 3 months of 24. So you have 40% of the workforce, of whom salaries, wages, one-off payments are yet to be determined and will be tracked by our wage tracker. And this information...
I think also for me to trade stocks, I would want to...
rich in information.
I would want to take advantage of the market maker tax status too.
So, as I said, we are data dependent, and we make decisions.
Because with the way that I would trade it, I would probably get screwed by the wash trading rules, right?
Today is we have confirmed our inflation outlook, and we consider that the information that we have received in the last few weeks since our December meeting show that the medium-term inflation outlook is broadly following the path that we had projected in December. That's point number one. Point number two, we look also very carefully at data concerning underlying inflation.
And that would affect my regular stock portfolio. I don't know if I actually want to do
We are
that.
seeing a decline across the board of pretty much...
I have seen some things that kind of suggest to me that I could do okay in stocks. when I come in and I see like an individual opportunity on a day basis, I've done pretty well with those.
Those were a few weeks which were rich in
I've made more money from
where we
those
have
than
seen that
from
both the
futures.
market-based and the survey-based inflation expectations are also, both in the short term and for some of them also for the medium term, really coming at around our 2% target. And of course, we look at the latest inflation numbers. And you will have seen, all of you, that the December number was 0.5% north of the November.
Oh, NVIDIA launched a deal with the U.S. government. Now that's some bullshit.
Which was caused by base effects, largely attributable to German
Reading about
measures.
Nancy Pelosi. Not everything that Nancy
It was
Pelosi
weaker than
does
we
is
had
like
anticipated.
she's got insider information, because you got to remember that her husband is like a fund manager and everything, and might be making plays like that just from his regular rules. But it looks like in that instance that she bought calls because she knew
I
something.
mentioned the inflation outlook, the underlying inflation. Of course, we look very carefully at the strength of monetary policy transmission, and here again we had some good data and information, notably from the bank lending survey.
Thank you. And the next
Where are we at relative to yesterday, by the way?
business order, please.
We're like within the
Your
thick of
data
yesterday's
depends on
action
this
now,
data
actually.
on wages that won't be published.
The higher end of that being 09.
Don't you think this could lead to cut too late, if not before June? And could you explain more about the word premature when you speak about rate cuts? Does that mean that Council has spoken about cuts?
Sorry, I have to pause for my favorite reporter.
I think it's you know, I'm not going to elaborate much further on that. All I can say is that the consensus around that the table of the Governing Council this morning was that it was premature to discuss rate cuts. It's as simple as that. You had another point on wages and publication of wage numbers. We will have a lot of information coming in the next few months. So we will have our projections in March. That's a big set of information that will clearly inform on the inflation outlook and which lead us to, you know, assess whether we are on path. We will receive 2 inflation monthly data for January and February before our March meeting. And then we will continue to receive additional data. And you're right, some of those wage data will come in later. But we look at a whole range of data. It's not just, we're not only focused on wages. We are clearly interested in wages because it's a significant component of service. And service is that section in the breaking down of inflation, which is still quite resistant and stayed at 4% from December to November. It's the only item.
When Captain Price, when you say people are finally tilting, which people are we talking about?
Thank you. Next question goes to Martin Arnold of the Financial Times.
Thank you very much. 2 questions from me. Firstly, just to go back to wage growth and what you're looking at, is it fair to assume that the focus on wages means that you need to see wage growth fall?
Yeah. Somebody asks, what's the most rewarding and volatile instrument?
Stabilizing.
Probably NQ.
What is it you want to see
Probably
from this
NQ.
wage data that you're waiting for? And the second one is, if I could ask you a bit of a longer term question, where do you see the neutral rate? Do you think that the neutral rate has been pushed
Reset
up
that.
by the crises that we've seen over the last few years, or is it unchanged, or has it actually come down? What's your view on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the 2 questions. So on wage growth, I think what we are already seeing, whether you look at sort of past wage numbers, whether you dissect that in compensation per employee, in negotiated wages, taking on excluding the...
Well, there they go further in the
we are
treasuries,
seeing
in
a
fact.
slight decline.
So now they are through
So it's directionally
yesterday's action, too.
good from our perspective. To your question, should it stabilize or should it decline? It's already declining.
You think that they could go to yesterday's high?
Really, our hope is that the wage increase, because we're still seeing an increase, whether you look at numbers at 5.2% or 3.4%, depending on what measurement item you take, that these increases are sufficiently absorbed.
I really don't think that the CTAs ever got involved, Lucas.
At the moment, so that it does not go into fueling inflation.
I think that I was just wrong and that it just wasn't a factor because of the ECB meeting.
This is that we had when we built the baseline of December, which was that profit unit would gradually come down as a result of dampened demand, as a result of our monetary policy.
Surely the guys that sold on the initial news have puked at this point, though.
For employees. It's also one of the reasons why we see growth coming up and the recovery.
Yeah, in fact, that last little reach of the highs, there was like a really big puke in ZN from that.
Inflation comes down, which will free up some purchasing power.
Well, CTAs definitely do trade treasury. In fact,
now, on your second question, I'm not
the interest rate complex is the source of is like one of the greatest sources of their revenue, actually.
Honest answer to you, I could play a game of telling you that maybe it's a little higher, but we're not.
So like looking at the way that the momentum strategies work, a large portion of why they did so well was because of the low interest rate environment.
Make the right policy decisions in due course to make sure that we reach our medium-term target of 2%.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Silvia Verzoni of Class CNBC TV channel in Italy. Silvia, please.
Yeah, but I think if you're trading a signal like that, and it's like right on the edge of your signal, but there's like an ECB meeting, right? Do you take it right? I don't think you do. I think that you wait because the ECB, because of exactly the situation that we just had, it forces it back into the range.
You said that there are more downside risk, and if it's true that the path of disinflation is following your December projections, is it true also for growth? Thank you very much.
You know, we are in January, and the first quarter, Q1 24, is going to end in March. So I think it's totally premature to anticipate what exactly will be the growth projection at our next meeting in March. We will come to that projection when
British billionaire Joe Lewis, 86, says he is so embarrassed as he pleads guilty in insider trading case after surrendering himself to the FBI over brazen scheme. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Good for him to admit it.
Further along in
most
the
can't.
disinflation process, before we can be sufficiently confident that inflation will actually...
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a trading signal before the ECB is done.
And at the
Well, I don't know if I want British billionaire Joe Lewis. I don't know who that is.
It's a disinflation process in which we are. It is working.
I mean, we did have trading signal during the press conference, but I hate those
Further
trades.
along in that process, to be confident that inflation will be at target sustainably so. And I'm giving you a little indication about what I...
Oh, what was this conversation you were having last night in Discord,
It's
Luke?
trying to give you the mechanics that we will apply in our considerations when we look at data in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Madame Lagarde. Let's give the next question to Francesco Canepa of Reuters. Francesco, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My first question is about why did you take out a reference to sustained
Was it you, Lucas? I didn't know there was...
from the opening statement?
It kind of doesn't show me very well.
And the second question is about a survey.
The names. Yeah, you were talking to somebody. Oh, it was last at in the afternoon.
Some staff
Oh, I'm way behind.
you as a leader. So what do you plan to
Oh, it was somebody posted their stats. Oh, yes, it was that guy. Dude.
Omission here or there. I think you should not be overly...
The guy yesterday that posted like, oh, I was down, but I was able to bring it back, and you looked at it and he had like 70 trades, and everybody in chat was like, I'm a little concerned about what you're doing, dude. Maybe you might want to take a step back.
And that are the backbone of our discussions, okay? But a word here or a word there, I would not give it too much.
No, I would not. I have been in the position to trade on insider information and make massive money off of it, and I don't do it.
In our expression, to use fewer words, to be more normal in a way, and that sometimes implies that we change, sentence, the order of a paragraph versus another one. So
it's because I care about integrity.
Too much attention to the deletion of one word or the other. On the other hand, when you see sentences or block off.
Now, on the other hand, if I was Nancy Pelosi, I would absolutely take the trades that Nancy Pelosi is taking because they're not illegal.
At the ECB, we have many surveys, and we actually conduct surveys in a very technically proof way that we can trust.
And I'd be pretty open about it too. I'd be like, listen, I agree that it's messed up, but the law allows me to do it. So if you don't like that, change the law. And I would be all in supporting the bills that would prevent Congress from trading.
To at a rate of about 60%, north of 60%.
But I would never cheat.
Are you happy to work at the ECB? The overwhelming majority, namely 80%, say, yes, I'm happy to work at the ECB.
Cheating to find six. I mean, I feel like I've already been a fairly successful individual, but like cheating for more success, I feel like that just kind of defeats the whole point. There's no fun in that.
And a question that is often asked as well is, do you feel a mission associated to your work? More than 90% of staff says yes. Now, we ask lots of other questions about satisfaction, dissatisfaction, compensation, dignity at work, and all the rest of it. And we pay great attention to these technically sound responses, and we act upon them. And we will continue to do so. Now, what keeps me going is those answers. And I'm extremely proud of the staff of the ECB. And I'm very proud and honored to lead the institution, because we are driven by a mission, delivering price stability, but serving the Europeans. And we will continue doing that. That's my response to your question. Those are the surveys that I'm particularly attentive to and keen to constantly improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Lagarde. The next question goes to Stefan Recchius of Handelsblatt. Stefan, please.
Thank you for the floor. I have two questions here. I'm here. Two questions, if I may. The first one is on the divergence of inflation rates.
A decent little downtrend now.
Inflation rates have fallen well below 2%.
I'm seeing the volume in ZN turn around.
With regard to inflation rates to bring it down to 2%. So how big of a burden is that in terms of transmission of monetary policy as well as...
I'm not getting the point, in my opinion. I think so let me review how I saw it.
And my second question is...
We pointed out to somebody, he said that he cheated, and he knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he was embarrassed because he didn't need to do that. And I said, good for him for
gotten out of
admitting that.
In that regard as well, assuming...
And then you said, well, you would do it too. If you were living off of it. I said, no, I would not.
You know, it's inherent to the euro area that we have heterogeneity, that we have divergence.
Let's say I put a wall hack up for you while you were playing. You're saying you wouldn't, absolutely would not.
Field that there is
absolutely would not.
And differences and divergences.
You understand what integrity is, right?
It's the case for the type of lending.
Integrity means
to Europeans
doing the right thing, even when you don't have to.
Whether you have a loan in France, when you're a household, you're going to have different terms applying to you.
I suppose that you could say not trading stocks as a congressman would also, could be considered as integrity, but
all
you know, I'm more concerned with like what would be breaking the law, what would be breaking the spirit of the law. I don't think that what they do in Congress breaks the spirit of the law, but I do think that it opens up the room for what would we say, conflicts of interest, and that's why I think it should be banned.
Inflation was much higher in the Baltic states.
But I'm not going to fault anybody for taking advantage of it before they change their rules.
To decide for the whole of the euro area,
but
the governors are
you're saying if you could do something that would get you a lot of money, even though it was illegal, but you wouldn't be caught, that you would do it. No, it would not. Because that's what integrity means, is doing the right thing even when you don't have to.
I'm not going to pass any other judgment in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
well, what is the right thing? That's why I'm kind of saying that, like, for certain, I can say that following the law is the right thing.
State of the monetary
that one's a pretty clear-cut case, right?
On the future, how important will it be on the decisions that the ECB will have to make along the year? And a second question, if I may.
It's very important that you understand this. How are you to run any kind of a business without integrity? People, I think, are like way short-term about this. And I tell you what, people can tell, man. I don't know how it is that they can tell, but if you have that attitude, like I would take advantage if I can get away with it sort of thing, people can tell and they won't trust you. Integrity is an essential part of even having a functioning economy. Because how can anybody trust to do business with you if you don't have integrity? So it's absolutely essential that, number one, that you always conduct yourself with integrity.
Down to what will be optimal for the perspective of...
I know the same law forbids something for you, but that's not the case.
And large differences between the member states.
That's not the case. If I have information about a new game that Activision Blizzard is going to put out, and I trade on it, that would be insider trading, because that is insider information. And a congressman would be hit for trading on that information the same as I would be.
Necessarily, because we start from a balance sheet size which will not require that the operational framework principles that we will decide collectively at the governing council level will have an impact.
You say that it would be hard, but if you value integrity, it is not hard. It's not hard at all.
You're talking about the US market here.
You just say,
I wouldn't want to.
I'm not going to do that.
Number one, and I have full trust in my colleague and colleagues.
Can I see that order when it got stacked at what, 08?
Otherwise, to actually supervise very carefully what is going on at the regional banks.
I can, in fact.
I'm not passing judgment on that.
Thank you, Madame Lagarde. And the next question goes to Carlo Boffa of Police.
So for that, I see...
Thank you very much.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's added onto the offer.
First question, I want to ask that given the latest PMI...
Hard to day trade on the prison library computer.
Where do you think that growth stood in the fourth quarter of 2023? Do you still stand by your forecast that you made in December that the Eurozone will avoid the recession? And the second question is again about the staff survey mentioned before. Direct criticism at you. I wanted to ask, do you think it's...
Well, this is why I always harp on this, by the way. What Nancy Pelosi does when she trades NVIDIA, knowing about a potential government contract that's coming through, is not insider trading. It is a conflict of interest, but it is not insider trading, because that is not private information. That is public information.
The most recent PMI numbers are actually little indication.
Sure you can. If you're sitting in front of the market and you have information that is insider information, you can't trade it.
The composite PMI output, it's higher than it was the month before.
That's why if you're a trader, that you got to take efforts to make sure that you don't get crossed, because then you just can't do anything for a while.
It's usually very, very insightful in all sorts of things. But, for us, these PMI numbers...
No, it's not semantics.
Small signal that
it's a misunderstanding of what insider trading is.
We have the conditions for recovery.
If you have information about a company that is supposed to be released to the public at a certain time, that is insider information. Okay? Going-ons of a congressional hearing is not insider information.
Anyway, you will find it, but I'm not going to waste everybody's time. With
It is public information that we all have the right to know about at any time.
And that weakness obviously applies to.
It's just that that information isn't disseminated very efficiently.
The technical terminology.
Insider information is not information that I have that other people don't.
I remember discussing that with my.
That's the mistake that people think, is they think that if you're trading and you know something that other people don't, that's insider trading. That's not true.
In a recession and said, what?
Insider trading has to do with the type of information that it's market pertinent information about a company that belongs to the company.
Understanding of the economy. on your second question, look.
Because you will trade off of information that other people don't know all the time. That is like a critical part of the market.
Not just economists.
If you're a farmer and you're hedging your crop, you have information that other market participants don't have. So insider trading is not trading on information that other people don't have.
The last question goes to a participant via the video link. So Federico Fobini from Corriere della Sera. Federico, please, over to you.
So it's on screen now.
Well, yeah, that's the same thing. Tell HFT that they can't act on information before it reaches the rest of traders and investors. That's exactly what happens is HFT.
Where is he?
They get information before other people, and that's legal. But again, this is another instance where it's a conflict of interest. They have a fiduciary duty to execute clients' orders in the most efficient manner, and I don't think that they do. So it's a conflict of interest. Congress, when they're meddling in those sorts of things, it gives an incentive to enrich yourself at the expense of taxpayers, to do things that will make you more money and not necessarily what's in the best interest of the country. That's why stock trading should be banned, because it's a conflict of interest. It's not insider trading.
I understand that probably the ECB wants to see wage settlements data that have to do with the first quarter, which probably you will receive from Eurostat at the end of April.
Well, it came back down there pretty good. Was there something that they had said there?
I checked that very carefully because I received the same question from multiple Italian journalists. So you must be feeding them. On your first question, I would simply repeat what I have said. So I partially responded to your question. We are looking at all data, not just wages. Huh? And in terms of activity, what we're seeing is hard data that is.
Guard said April's too soon to begin rate cuts. I'm giving you an understanding of the rate trajectory, but this is forward guidance. This is not forward guidance. Is that why they came back down? Perhaps.
If we try to look at PMI numbers in particular, as I just said, we are seeing some encouraging numbers, whether it indicates stabilization or slight uptick. This is, it's very early sign. People can challenge PMI numbers, and they do. But at least we are seeing numbers that are either to the upside or stable. On your other question, as I said, we are looking at all sorts of data. We are looking at wages a lot for the reasons that I have explained.
No, I don't agree with that statement either. However you're trying to discern or try to make it more precise definitions, I think we can agree in the end that it brings an unfair advantage, even inefficient dissemination of public information. So I think that in that comment, there is this underlying assumption that things should be fair.
We look at multiple data.
And that's not true either.
Of course.
Different market participants have different advantages and disadvantages, and then you come into the market and fight it out. And some people win and some people lose. It's not fair. There's nothing fair about it.
Given the geopolitical development.
And there never will be. There's an inherent contradiction. There's an inherent conflict between of the market being fair and the market being free and
We will be
efficient.
very attentive to that, and we will see how much fiscal consolidation there is relative to the budgets that have been submitted.
In order to make the market fair, you basically destroy its ability to actually transact.
Thank you very much. This closes our press conference. The next press conference is scheduled for the 7th of March, and until then...
Oh, that's not true. The law isn't fair to me. Why should I follow it? But the law is fair to you. You are subject to the same rules that everybody else is. Right? There's a set of rules. There's the system that we live in. And all we can do is work within the rules to have the most success that we can, right? But we're all subject to the same rules. If you break the rules, then that's cheating, and that's wrong. And we should have integrity. But yes, the way that the rules are set up gives advantages to certain players over others, and that's unavoidable. And so the only thing that I can tell you is make sure that you're the one with the advantage. And if you're not the one with the advantage, then don't get involved, right? That's the whole thing that I'm trying to say is like, if you know something, if you have information that's not being priced correctly by the market, that gives you a good idea of what the future orders are going to be, then trade. And if you don't, then don't trade. Well, so now everyone has to pay 95% of their income in taxes. So you want to use, is it fair or not? You're getting into an area where it's kind of like fair is subjective. I think that most people would agree that that's not fair. Okay, but like fairness is not actually like a real property of the universe, right? It's a concept that we've come up with and that everybody interprets differently. I would take it, if a proposal like that was made, the approach that I would be taking is that that's a bad policy, that would be an ineffective policy, that would be like negative for the economy, not that it's fair or not fair. How is it fair that Nancy has info? Well, I didn't say that it was fair. I said that it's legal. I said that it's legal and that it's not insider trading. And that it's a conflict of interest. No, I'm not going to drop it because it's an important thing to understand if you're going to do this, guys. See, here's what's going on. Is that you have ideas about the way that the world should be that are in your head because of, cultural expectations and things that people have told you and things like that. And one of the things that you've been told is that things are supposed to be fair. And what I'm telling you is twofold. One, it can't be fair because different people have conflicting interests. So there's always going to be conflicts of interest where one person is going to benefit and the other person is not going to benefit. So how do you make that fair? And number two, you would not actually have a functioning market if you tried to make it fair, right? So I had came across this on TikTok the other day. So there was this girl and she was talking about a study that said, well, the way that people get the way that people get compensated for their work is not fair. There are people that do work that is extremely valuable to society, And if we go and we calculate the actual value that that labor is creating for society, we can see that they do not get paid what they're really worth. For instance, the net impact on society that a teacher has is not anywhere remotely close to the amount that they get paid, right? So here's the thing. This is how communists came about, right? This is exactly what communism was all about. Was they said, the way that what I'm getting paid isn't fair. I'm doing something important and this person is not, and I should be paid more than it. I don't think that in the West that we do a very good job of teaching people what communism was actually like and like how it actually functioned. Okay. Not everybody in communist Russia made the same amount. You know that? People made different amounts, and the amount that you made what depended on the job that you were doing, and there was these bureaucrats and everything that made this fairness decision for everybody else to say what is fair based on the work that you're doing and how important it is to society. What is a fair wage for this particular job, right? And what happened under that system where you had quote unquote fairness. Of course, it wasn't fair because the way that they decide things is to decide things in their favor and the favor of their buddies. So it's not actually fair. But even if it was fair, okay, it didn't work anyways. And why is that? Well, because people will go to the job that like generates the most value for society, and you have too many of them, right? If you come in and you say, well, being a teacher is the most valuable thing for society, you know, teaching can be a very rewarding job. So there would be a lot of people that would love to be teachers. And if that's what they were paying for it, then everybody would want to do it, right? And then you'd have too many teachers and you wouldn't have enough people doing the other thing. And that's exactly what happened in communist Russia, right? Was that they constantly had shortages because they couldn't get their capital to where it needed to be, because the fairness gets in the way of efficient allocation of the resources. Not that the markets are perfectly efficient, but it gets the job done. And that's the whole thing that I'm trying to help you understand here is that, like, having something that is perfectly fair conflicts with having a market that actually works. In other words, in order for the market to even function, some people have advantages over other people. If it was perfectly fair, there would never be any reason to trade, guys. There just wouldn't be a market. This other thing is, like, people say, maybe someday the robots will take over everything and the robots will just run the economy. Because the robots will figure out the perfect efficiency of everything and just know what things should be worth and everything, right? That will never work. Because what will happen in that situation is the robots will know everything. Everything is perfectly fair. There will never be any reason for them to take a trade, right? The market is reliant on somebody coming in here that doesn't know what's going on and placing a random trade to create noise so that the people that actually do know what's going on have the ability to come in and make a profit off of the information that they have, right? So the reality is that it's not fair, it never will be fair, and it shouldn't be fair. Maybe we can sit and we can say there's a certain amount of unfairness that we can and cannot tolerate, but it will never be quote unquote fair. There will always be a certain amount of unfairness. So it's incorrect to say X thing should be illegal because it's not fair. That's not the way that the world works. And if you took that position on everything, you wouldn't have an economy left. It wouldn't function if you took that approach to everything. There are going to be things that are unfair, and we have to deal with them, essentially. Well, that was a big flurry of activity right there. I think it was selling, but wow. I'm one research paper away from becoming a comic book villain. There you go. So, we have rules against trading on insider information. We do not have rules against trading on asymmetrical information. So you can have information that other people don't have. And yeah, it's not fair. You know that thing and you know how it's going to turn out, and they don't. That's not fair. But that is trading. That is the way that it works. And as a trader, you should be looking for every opportunity that you can to create that kind of informational asymmetry. Just don't trade insider information. That's why I think it's so important for you to understand that as a trader, because if you come into this with this idea that it's supposed to be fair, then you are never going to, you're always going to be on the wrong side of the trade. Because you're always going to be saying it should be fair and everybody should know what I know, and then you're going to be clueless that you don't actually know, and you're just going to get run over every time. And you're not going to take advantage of the greatest sources of edge, which is informational asymmetry. You don't trade insider information, but there is information out there that is public information that not everybody has and can be advantageous to your trading and can potentially predict how certain situations will turn out. And your job as a trader, as an informed trader, is to find those informational asymmetries and exploit them. That's what the market is all about, is finding that information and bringing it to the market and making money off of that information. But is this still Congress making rules to trade privileged information? Well, so my understanding is that this information is not classified as privileged information. That's the problem, is that it is all public information. It's just that Congress doesn't put the notes up for a couple of weeks and yada, yada, yada. Like this thing with Nancy Pelosi, right? She bought these options like 2 weeks ago. Now we find out that they made a deal. So it wasn't that information was insider information. It's that the government basically drags its feet on posting it, right? But it's not considered insider information. So I'm saying it's not insider information. So you have two ways of approaching this, right? One is saying, well, it should be considered insider information. So I would say no, because number one, I think that the best thing for everybody would be for that information to get put out as quickly as possible, right? Like if there's a congressional meeting, like every meeting that's not containing, confidential information should be public and everybody should be able to watch it. And then you would be able to watch those things and be able to take advantage of the edge from it, right? And I also think that it hurts the market when we put a bunch of really important market information behind like some sort of a wall. That doesn't help the market either. But I don't think that Congress should be allowed to do it. The reason that I think that Congress shouldn't be allowed to do it is because there's a conflict of interest, right? I'm okay with people using the information that they have to make money. There's insider trading laws. You don't break the insider trading laws, but you should use informational asymmetry to make money. I don't like what Congress does because it's a conflict of interest. And understanding why, because you're all, the idea that is presented to everybody is that it's insider trading. And the reason I have a problem with that is because that creates kind of this cultural expectation around how we use the information that we do that kind of says you shouldn't use the information that you have to your advantage. So it's a narrative that I think does objective damage to people, particularly a new beginning trader. And that's why I harp on it. Congress shouldn't be allowed to trade because it's a conflict of interest. That also has other implications. Because that means that it's not just that they shouldn't be able to trade Nvidia on, private government information. It's that they shouldn't be able to trade Nvidia at all because that's a conflict of interest. That it can cause them, because they own the Nvidia stock, to craft the law in a way that would help Nvidia and not the American people. So the best thing for the American people is that there's not that conflict of interest, that they can't make money off of their investments. Quite frankly, I think that the laws, so once you take that whole framework together, right? Now all of a sudden, what you should do about it becomes a lot more clear. Because the things that people are proposing wouldn't do shit. It's private information, so you shouldn't be able to trade on it. Okay, so then you go and you tell your friend and they trade on it. That's what would happen, is that then congressmen would just get paid for tips, right? Or they would, they would just give beneficial laws and so forth to the companies that they already own, right? But if we understand that it's a conflict of interest, then we say, they shouldn't be able to own any stocks. But then there's also many other things that they do that are conflict of interest that we should get rid of too, right? Like giving these guys like these favorable speaking terms and stuff like that. I don't think that should be allowed. I don't think that should be allowed. Because it's basically like backdoor bribery in some instances. So, okay, if you give us this piece of legislation, then we will pay you $1 million to give a speech somewhere. Right? That's how they do it. That's how Congress does it. And that's how they make so much freaking money. Right? I think that all of those conflicts of interest should be closed. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. And they shouldn't be allowed to do it afterwards too, because that's still how you bribe it, is they're like, okay, you give us this favorable legislation, and then when you're no longer in office, you can work for our lobbying firm, right? That's got to be closed. You can't work for lobbying. You can't get speaking fees. And then we just have to pay congressmen enough that it's still worth it to them financially to do it. But that from then on, they have to just live on their congressional salary, right? That's what should actually, once we understand that it's a conflict of interest. You see why it matters? Okay, so in a debate of fairness of a certain law, while markets are unfair, all laws should be. Well, so we can kind of sit down and say there's a certain amount of fairness or unfairness that we can tolerate, right? But the problem, the thing that I kind of take issue with is the blanket statement that it should be fair. Because it shouldn't. It shouldn't be. You wouldn't have an economy if it was fair. So like as an example of like there's a certain amount of unfairness that we should tolerate, I'm totally okay with Jeff Bezos being able to be a trillionaire and have his own space station or his own planet for that matter, as long as the quality of life for the lowest quintile in the United States is pretty good too and continues to improve. See, it doesn't matter to me that it's unfair. Why should you care that Jeff Bezos has a planet other than that you're envious? Don't be envious, guys. It's not a good look. It doesn't help you in life. But what we should really care about is, what is life like for the lowest quintile of workers in the United States? I would say that in the past few decades that, well, it's been getting better recently, actually, but I think that they have a long ways to go. And I think that there are certain things about the way that the economy is structured that is inherently against those people, and that we need to remove those barriers. It's not fair, quote unquote, fair, that you have these people with all of the capital And they can basically do whatever they want because they can always get more capital from somebody else from borrowing. And meanwhile, a person down at the bottom, if they want to own things, they have to put it in a tax advantaged account where they can't do anything with it until they're 65. That's fucked up. That's not fair. That's a certain amount of unfairness that I think is not tolerated. And the thing is that we can make a change on that without, without really having to affect everything else negatively, right? Like, I think that would just be like a win-win. It's like anybody that makes under $250,000 a year, that all of their investments are tax-free. That would be a huge win. The most valuable commodity I know of is information. That's correct. That's correct. So I can look at certain individual things and I can say that is too unfair, that it's so unfair that it's causing a problem. Especially if it's like really holding back the quality of life for a large number of people. But most people say that the people that are talking about this stuff, like the goal should be equity and fairness. No. New home sells in 5 minutes, yes. Oh, by the way, I don't think I turned my new squawk back on after all that. I'll make sure that I have that set. They're expecting a new home sales change of 10%, by the way. So if they go above that, that could be a problem. Looking at this and the way that it's gone, though, it didn't play out the way that I thought it would. And it's just staying there, which says to me that they're not posing meta order coming in the other way. So that, I think, means I don't have a trade yet. We might still get one in the next hour. Sorry, I should never say never, but my current mode is to be hands off with it. Do you agree with me that if everyone had access to a 401k and would make everyone who contributes to it a millionaire in the 20, would that be? No. I think that the 401k is a trap. The 401k was basically designed so that money managers would get control of all of your money. That's really what 401ks are for. It's a transfer of your capital to a class of portfolio managers. So all of the money all of the power that you could have, the stock ownership that you could have, the opportunities that you could have from the ownership of your capital is essentially taken away from you until you're 65. I think that you shouldn't have to put your investment in a special account that you can't touch for 30 years in order to get the favorable tax treatment. I think that if you're under a certain level of income, that you should just get the favorable tax treatment no matter how you're doing it. Frustrating market for the second. Well, I'd say it's been frustrating all week, right? Because Monday and Tuesday was slow. Yeah, yesterday I think was kind of a little confusing, but I think we'll see a bad news is good. I think that if on the new home sales, if you got something like a 15%, I think that the treasury market would flip out a little bit about it. I don't know if it would be enough to cancel out everything else that's happened. I kind of think that this piece of news is probably going to be less significant than everything else that we've seen today, but you never know. This market seems to be doing some kind of perplexing things right now, I think. you had a free access to your account, I think that would be great. I think that if middle class people could invest tax-free and be able to do whatever they wanted with those assets, I think that would be a beneficial thing. Because the thing that brings wealth is having assets that appreciate and that you can do things with, right? So you have this big wad of money, and then you go and you start a business with it, or whatever the deal is. Or you use it to borrow money and get a loan, and like this is what the rich do, right? They borrow money against their stocks. You can't do that with your 401k. Right? So basically, like, the greatest source of like ownership for the middle class is locked behind a paywall, essentially. That basically puts you in a position where all you can do is consume. As a middle class person, you're basically all you can do is consume. Until you get to the point where you're maxing out those tax advantaged accounts, and then you're actually building up assets, and then you move from the middle class to the upper middle class / upper class, right? That, in my mind, is the difference between the middle class and the upper class, is that the upper class has assets outside of their tax advantaged accounts. Yeah, the poll is only mild here. 5 seconds before the release. Okay, so it was slightly less than expected, 8% versus 10%, and I'm not seeing any reaction whatsoever, so. So when you come over here to the chart and you look at, like, okay, are we going to get momentum? Because it's like once you start closing below this thing, if you had that, then you could start getting momentum, and it could come maybe down to here, right? But that's not what happened. It mean reverted. Mean reverted, so I don't think that the momentum signal's triggered. Or maybe perhaps mean reversion signals triggered. But I don't think so. I think that they must have bought it up because of the ECB. It seems like that they thought that the ECB was the most important thing. Even though I didn't see anything super important in there, but I don't know. I was yapping a lot, so I don't know if that was... Let me double check here. Oh, that's interesting. Quarter 4 GDP unexpectedly soars, driven by lack of destocking and an RV spending spree. A 5 sigma beat to expectations. Jeez. But we're up. Okay. Okay. Kind of a little weird. Probably from the ECB, though. I'm not seeing a whole lot to really help me understand why it came out that way. So we'll just wait. Let's see here. Joseph Wang. This is a big piece of news, yet I don't see it on any legacy news outlet. So glad. This is Greg Abbott saying his statement on Texas's constitutional right to self-defense. Yeah, that is kind of a big deal. I don't know what happens. You want me to read the statement that he put out? President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. Failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4 has triggered Article 110, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. Let's look at that a little bit. So I think they're saying Article 1, Section 10. Section 10, Clause 3, no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Okay. No, we don't. You gave me a 5-minute break. I did feel like that you guys... I thought you were going to keep arguing. I find it really weird that it was like, oh, you see, we won the argument. And so then I went and I said like a whole ton of stuff and then I didn't get any response. So I was like, okay. Because I kind of interpret silence as acceptance that I'm right. That's how I think. But there was something else I wanted to go into, actually. There's actually something else I wanted to go into. Let's, I closed it down, but how's Tesla doing here? Tesla. So, not too bad. I mean, it did open down and everything. There was a little bit of an attempt to squeeze it, but that kind of got smacked down, and they're about where they opened at. So I kind of wonder. So here's the question: who is the best automaker, and who is the worst? And Tesla doesn't count. Everybody says Tesla's not actually an auto company, so you can't value. Okay, fine. We won't include Tesla in the auto industry sector, whatever we want to call it, right? It's so who is the best and the worst auto companies? I kind of feel like that the best is Toyota, right? If I'm going to buy a car, I kind of want to do Toyota Motor Co. Well, they're down this morning too, probably because of Tesla. But their stock's been on a pretty good run. I have to go and do some fundamental analysis to understand if the price is good or bad, but Billy says that the best is Toyota too. You think Fiat is, but is Fiat, who is owned by Fiat? Or who owns Fiat rather? That depends on what you're looking for. No, we're talking about as a company to invest in. What is the best of class and what is the worst of class? So we think that Toyota is the best producer overall. That makes it a candidate for the best stock, but we would need to do a little bit further analysis. But so we put that as a candidate for the best, right? Fiat is part of Stellantis. Oh, well. Stellantis. STLA, is that it? This is definitely not the time to invest in that sort of a thing. It's kind of interesting. Like, we are seeing all of the autos on the downturn, but some of them are actually prices looking pretty good. On the trend, at least. Yeah, Stellantis is falling hard and face planting multiple floors. Well, it's kind of both. It's kind of both, right? So we're trying to figure out who are the best and worst cars so that we can determine who are the best and worst stocks. Who's most likely to survive the negative? Stellantis. So I heard that Porsche is a stock and that they're not doing very well. Is it Porsche Group? Hey. Wait, is that correct? Wow, the name of the stock is like a little weird. Wait, is that really OTC? Wait, but that is pretty bad. Use this wording car brand ownership tree and use car brand ownership tree. Oh, I see what you're getting at. It's these things about who owns who. Stellantis are the ones that own like Dodge and all of them now, right? Yeah, Porsche is so. Volkswagen is. I think the reason why these are showing up as OTC is because I have USA set. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. The stock ticker is P911 in Germany. That's more like it. That's more like what I was expecting to see Porsche. I don't know, guys. How can I buy a Porsche? Am I saying that? Is it really like a at the end, or is it Porsche? Porsche. I don't know. I don't know how you're supposed to say. I think I always say Porsche. But how can I own a Porsche if the stock price is that awful right now? Especially if you're supposed to be doing it, if you're trying to do it as like a, conspicuous consumption sort of a thing, like for other people to see it so that they know that you're rich, right? I don't think that's it. Porsche is the European way. Okay. So I guess if you want to be, look rich, you got to get a Lexus, I guess. Like an RCF or something like that. An LC. There you go. Go Bentley. You know what? I get a lot of advertisements for Bentley. Handcrafted luxury. Show me your models. I don't think I've ever seen Bentleys just out driving on the road around here, at least. Just get a Lambo. Yeah, I'm not looking for well, if we're talking about a car for me, I'm not gonna get like $100,000 car, right? I might be convinced to do like a $70,000-$80,000 car. That's, you know, that price new, but I buy it used or something. But as I was saying, you could do a Lexus, although it looks like the Lexuses are actually not as nice as I thought. Bentleys, I think Bentleys are more popular in the UK, right? Bentleys are popular where there's money. Okay. There was a couple of these. I don't think it was Bentley. Who was it? It was one of these companies that are basically taking Ferrari engines and putting them in their own cars, and they were showing how they really weren't very good cars at all. And I think that the one that I saw a video on in particular, it was like the supercar with the highest depreciation rate. Maserati, maybe it was Maserati. That sounds right to me. Also owned by Fiat. So, so if it comes down to Stellantis or Volkswagen, who do you think is worse? All of these ones you're talking about are Stellantis, huh? You say Stellantis is much, much worse? I'm a little, but I'm kind of have heard some things about Stellantis that is like, man, you guys all agree that Stellantis. So is there one that's worse than Stellantis? You think? Do you think? So now let's go and look it up. I remember there's this guy on TikTok that he does like fundamental analysis, and I think he liked Stellantis though. Who's the most evil and straight up steals money from people? If so, that's the worst one. Simply Wall Street. Okay. I gotta log in here. Where's the login? Where's the login? Oh, platform. There. You should just say login, you dopes. All right. Is that it right there? An ICSTLA? Okay, so that's interesting. It has financial health, as it looks really good, but its future looks really, really awful, and its value is just kind of off. Wow, earnings are forecast to decline by an average of 12.5% per year for the next 3 years. Unstable dividend track record. Price history and performance. When you look at the performance like that, it doesn't look very good. It has a low price volatility compared to the industry, which I think is a little interesting. Not what I expected. Get a forerunner over at Larry Miller's. You know what, Billy Ray? I bought my van at a Toyota in Bountiful, and the person that sold the car to me, like I looked out on basically getting like their best performing salesperson. They were like, oh, well, I wasn't, planning on doing anything, but, you just kind of crossed my path. So I'm kind of thinking I might go back over there again, but we'll see. I don't know. The problem I have with the Toyotas is that the Toyotas don't excite me, you know? Like everybody here has a 4Runner, right? 4Runner is probably the most popular car in Utah, I think. Probably, yeah. But that's why I'm like, so maybe I go and I get a Lexus. Sure. But the Lexuses aren't that cool either. I do like those GR Toyotas though. Like the GR Corolla. Oh my gosh, have you guys seen the new Toyota supercar that is supposedly in the works? I think it's called a Toyota GR GT, I think. Yeah, it's like a GT4. No, that's not it. That's not the car that I saw. Let's see if I come into, like, it must be over the last week. It had to have been over the past week. There we go. Fueling rumors. Road version of Toyota GT3 Racer. That's the car. Is that not sick for a Toyota? Yeah, 4Runner is the nicest 4x4. It is. So in my area, like a RAV4, right? Oh, what's this? What's a RAV4 Prime? I don't think I've seen one of those before. There we go. These TRD off-road ones, I see those all over the place around here. It's actually not that. They don't... I thought that they had ones with trims that were way more expensive than that, but I guess not. But maybe that's what the RAV4 Prime is about? Advanced powertrain, okay. There's an SE and an XSE. Most traders on YouTube drive Lamborghinis, so you might as well buy it. Yeah, exactly. But I do have a Toyota van. I have the Van XLE. Where is it? Sienna. That's exactly what it looks like. Except for mine's white, I think. White or gray. No, I think it's this one. An older model, of course. Buy new cars, that's kind of pointless. And it's the XLE, I think. I don't think that the XSE was a thing with mine. Yeah, on the version of my car, they didn't have these higher trims. Otherwise, why not go platinum? Heated steering wheel. I did see this one that had like the seats in it had the foot come out like a lazy boy. But there were some other problems with that one, so I didn't get that one. Go. You go. Oh, how do we even freaking spell that? P-E-U-G-E-O-T 907. Yeah, okay. I don't know, it's not tactical enough for me. That looks like refined. That looks like for a British man with refined tastes, you know? Where are we? Platinum. Limited. Sport seats. Oh, I want to see that. Show me the pictures. Oh, come on. Got cool colors too. Oh man, look at that blue. Oh. I'm sure that it doesn't look like that in real life, but if it did, that's pretty. That's pretty. Woodland edition. That sounds tempting too. Should have waited. I should have waited to buy a van. So now I just want a nicer van. Nah, I just go get a Corolla. Wait. What's the nicest like if you just get Corollas? If you just get cars. The Crown is kind of tempting too. Corolla. Corolla or hatchback? Let's just say Corolla. Corolla. How nice did the trims get over here? Nightshade, black painted sport side rocker panels, and a spoiler. Yeah. Hybrid Nightshade. No, they didn't really get to. Just the XSE. JBL audio. Yeah. Okay. Cool colors. Ooh, that looks so nice. Sure, I could do that one. Maybe I'll just get a Corolla. Stellantis. You see how easily distracted I am? Wow, they have a dividend that pays 6.8%? Really? But it's not reliable. Dude, that's no good. So they actually say it's overvalued. Price to earnings ratio versus its peers. Wow, it's terrible compared to these others. Wow, Ferrari is the winner, man. Maybe so it seems like it's like Volkswagen and Stellantis for the shorts and Ferrari and Toyota for the longs, right? But I think that I want to go with long Toyota, short Stellantis. How does that sound? Just based off of our preliminary research. Let's see here. So, I'll put it down in here. Auto. There should also, I think I need to add, how should we say it? Position? Maybe? Okay, so we got, what is it? What's the ticker name? STLA. And what was Toyota? Did I close freaking TradingView? Toyota. PM. STLA. What's a Volkswagen? Volkswagen. BET. Ferrari. Oh, race. That's what it's called, race. You know what? I'll just do this. I won't put Volkswagen on there because I'm unsure about the symbol. Team Polizzi wins. Bulls. Val 3? What's that? It doesn't show up over here, but see, I think like when I do Volkswagen, right, and I get all these different ones. If I come in and I say only USA, then I get these OTC ones. So those are probably foreign deposit, or whatever you call them, ADRs or whatever. VLKAF. Yeah. Oh, well, that chart, that pattern, the chart looks good. So we'll do that. VLKAF. So we could do something like I could buy Toyota and I could sell Stellantis and hedge it. Right? I won't do it with leverage at first, but maybe someday we move on to doing it with leverage. There we go. We did some good stock research today. That was fun too. That was fun too. Tomorrow we got to do consumer discretionary. Do a co-integration on them. Well, I got all this room, so I figure out how to make it so that it will give me like the live stock prices and like the PE ratios and stuff. But I think I need better data than that. But I think part of my problem is that you know, basically you've got to get it down to, okay, like a single number that tells me which one do I want to get in, essentially, right? And I haven't really devised a method for that. It'd be a lot of work and thinking to get to that point, but we just kind of as we go along. So like the first thing on here is I want a price earnings forward growth, which is kind of hard to get, but we'll find a way. We'll find a way. Basically, I want to know the PE ratio divided by the next year forward earnings. Let's find a good Mary Jane stock. Are any doing so amazing it's unbelievable? Well, I kind of feel like the whole stock market is doing so amazing that it's unbelievable. Probably the darling is Nvidia, right? Probably the darling is the Nvidia. What's the best place to trade in? I think it's the CME, but I think that, you know, that's not necessarily how I would go about deciding where to trade, right? Find where you have an edge. Wise Sheets Investing? What's that? The ultimate spreadsheet add-on for stocks. Ooh. Okay. Data. What do we get? Incomes. I like. Okay. I'm liking what I'm seeing already because it's giving me the information that I want to know very easy. So I can get EBITDA. Yes, I like this. I want price earnings growth. Key metrics. There's PE ratio. Analyst estimates, maybe? I think I would probably have to look into these individual metrics a little bit more to understand. Maybe the growth is in there. Well, I'm looking like estimated revenue growth average. Maybe that's expressed as a percentage. I don't know. And they give you historical data and stuff. Okay. Screener data too. That's cool. Okay. And how much is it? Oh, no. Oops. Wrong way. Wrong one. Maybe later. Pricing. Hey, that's not bad. That's like $10 a month. $5 to $10 a month. This one gives fastest data speeds and additional screener functionality. I don't think that would do anything for me. So I think that I would probably want to go with this one. Let's see here. I'm going to make a new Google document here. So I was looking at, what was I looking at? Man, because I need all the datas. I need all the datas, guys. There was a company and they were offering like data for futures that I would be able to use. Let me look it up again. Let's see here. So it's from this book that I was watching. Norgate. So they had a package for futures that was $270 for a year. There we go. Oh, Mary Jane as a marijuana. Oh, guess I could look at that. I think part of the idea here is So we call them cannabis, right? Right. We can look that up one of these days if you want. I don't see myself investing in cannabis, but if it makes money, I guess. You know what? They've been moving around still quite a bit here in the treasuries, but still, I say a pretty frustrating day. Like, if we had waited until after the news, like if I had taken a trade after the ECB press conference, most I would be making is like $5. It's the only industry that will. It's an industry that will only grow. Maybe you're right. That's one of those. Actually, it's not a bad idea because I remember when it was the popular thing, right? And I was like, well, this actually does sound like a good idea, but you don't want to get it when everybody else is talking about it. Things have only gotten better for that industry, I would say, legally speaking. And it's not really talked about anymore. So maybe there could be some opportunities there. Yeah. I don't think that it would be a part of my core 5 stocks. I have 3 right now, and but I actually, one of them is silver and probably shouldn't count. So I probably need to buy 3 new stocks. I feel like it's all way too quiet right now in income investment. So let's see here. We got about 20. Oh my gosh, one of my children is very unhappy. I'm just coming in here, check if there's any other good stories that we want to look at. New home sales rose over 4% in 2023 as existing sales hit record low. Nope, nothing to... Once something federal happens, then it will probably be too late for early investing. You think so? Mm-hmm. It does kind of feel like eventually it will happen. Well, this is one of those things where it's like, can you see how my approach, especially to things like legislation, is very different from the average person, right? Like, the average person says, well, it's not fair that you're allowed to do this, but you're not allowed to do this. That doesn't make any sense. There's an inherent contradiction here. This is, it's basically, it's all based off of this logic about what should or shouldn't be based on my set of values and principles, right? And when it comes to public policy, I'm more interested in what works, right? So there is, it seems to me that the effects of marijuana are pretty negative on you, and that marijuana does affect productivity overall, which is to say, I think that you could, if you had a time machine, you could say, here's America with marijuana and here's America without marijuana. I think that the without would ultimately be more productive. And it would have better outcomes for individual people. That's certainly the case when you're banning like the really bad, cocaine and all that sort of stuff, right? You can use those drugs to just destroy a nation, right? So it is beneficial to the nation as a whole to ban drugs. And there's kind of this question of how bad is the drug actually for you versus how big of a problem it is, right? And marijuana is kind of getting to that point where it's popular enough and there's enough public support that you might not be able to justify keeping it, that there's more harm done by keeping it illegal than there is from, preventing people from using it, right? There you go. You see, I think banning is always wrong, making illegal and things start to improve. The but that's like you're trying to do it's basically like trying to come to truth through deduction rather than empiricism, right? And I'm saying so it, like Sherlock Holmes, right? Sherlock Holmes, he'll go and he'll have a theory. He'll say, okay, I think that because this guy does, and I saw this and I saw that, that must mean this, and that must mean this, and that must mean this, and then I have a conclusion. But he doesn't sit down and say, okay, now that's the truth, and that's what we should do. What he says is, okay, this is my theory. Let's go there and find out if they're there. Right? He goes and he collects empirical evidence, and then you find enough information. Maybe you find even more information that you were missing, and you know, maybe you find you were wrong about one thing and you're right about another thing, right? It's coming down to empirical data. So I'm just telling you, like, for you personally, your life will be better if you don't do those drugs. Just as straight up it is. It has overall negative impact on you. And it has an overall negative impact on society. But banning the drugs also has an overall negative impact on society. That's why banning alcohol didn't go very well, right? So there seems to be this threshold where the effort involved in keeping the drug banned isn't worth it anymore. And it seems like marijuana is approaching that level. So I think you're probably right that it will eventually be made legal everywhere. I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing, but that's what's going to happen. Don't do drugs, kids. Right? That's interesting. You say they had the worst addiction problem in Europe, and then they legalize it now and they have a problem. I think that on things like that, because I think that some people, especially like libertarian-leaning people, seem to think, oh, you just make everything legal and it'll work itself out. No, it doesn't. Sometimes it does, but sometimes there's actually a lot of factors that are involved in that. But, you know, like I think about at raves, like the approach that they've taken at raves is basically like we just look the other way. And it makes the problem worse. It makes more people use it, basically. To the point where like it's part of the culture and that's not a good thing for them. So all those people are poor. Fortunately, I've seen many people in the rave community that I thought were really, really bright just kind of waste away their lives. Or was it Oregon that made all drugs legal? I think there was, I don't know. Must have been somewhere else other than Oregon, no? And then there's these places that, like in California, where they're like, you know, we're not going to arrest people for doing drugs, and we're not going to do it. So the police don't do it. That's been a complete disaster, right? Music you have on right now, thanks, makes you think of a Crown Wig. Let's see here. The title is Lose It. You know, some of these have kind of like gaming memes built into them that might give you an idea of what track he was using when he made it, but I don't know what the case is for that one. Oh my gosh. Meth in particular is one that it will never reach that threshold, right? There will always be it will always be beneficial to society to ban it. That one is like really messes you up, man. I don't know. It's kind of, it comes back to that slow and fast thinking thing, right? So I think especially a person like me kind of comes down with this assumption that people think things through and they use logic and what their values are to decide how to do things. But that's not the way that most people function. The way that most people function is they're just using the machine learning frontal part of their brain. So all information that they've ever consumed is factored into this model in their head, You pass the new information into it, and it spits out conclusions, and you don't even think about it. You didn't even realize how you came to those conclusions. You know what I mean? And the default mode of thinking for most people is that kind of that frontal part of the brain, because we're a very social species, and that's why we evolved that, because that mode of thinking is fast and works really effectively in a fluid conversation sort of situation. Well, so what you're subjected to and the lifestyle decisions that you make have impacts on this neural network. So I'll give you an example to try and like way left field, but like for instance, this argument that Elon Musk is too rich and we need to tax his wealth, right? So I don't see Elon Musk selling his wealth anytime soon, because he's trying to get more ownership of Tesla, which is kind of funny because he sold so much of it earlier, right? And now he's trying to get more of it. That's kind of okay. Maybe they give it to him. We'll see. He wants ownership. So you don't want to sell it because that kind of gives up your ownership in the company, right? Also, if you sell it, selling the thing kind of destroys the thing to some extent. Like if Elon Musk sold his entire position in Tesla, I don't think that there would be a company left, right? When you say things like, I think that Elon Musk should be taxed on all his wealth or on his unrealized capital gains, what you're really saying is, I think that we should take the money from productive people that are in productive companies and are creating jobs for people and are changing the world, and that money should be given to government, where it will be used one time to do something like, give money to the homeless or right? Those are things that are essentially liabilities. I know it kind of seems a little wrong to say, oh, the homeless are liabilities, but there is a portion of the population that will never be self-sufficient on their own, and they are a liability to us. Now, we have found through economic research that it is good to help those people out, because they have negative impacts on everything else and the community and so forth, that you do want to do something about it. So we can do things about it. But when it comes to allocation of capital, we don't want to take all of the capital out of the most productive things and put it into things that are completely unproductive, or let's say minimally productive. Okay. So why do so many people think like that then? Well, because if all you've ever done in your life is consume, then it totally makes sense why you'd be like, oh, there's this huge amount of money that we could be using to consume a particular thing that would be beneficial for people. Why aren't we doing that? Because they don't understand that ownership of the asset is more valuable and more productive and does better for the society as a whole. Right? And that's what happens like with these world, like if you're on drugs and stuff, is it kind of leads you into making certain decisions and so forth that destroy that network in your brain, and you always come to bad conclusions. That's total bullshit. Sorry, reading back through the comments. So Jiwi says, you're selling humans short. If all drugs were legal, there would be no addicts. That's total bullshit. There would be more addicts. If all drugs were made legal across all of the United States, there would be more addicts, not less. Yeah, I know. So do you know anything about machine learning? I know a lot about machine learning. We got 5 minutes. Let's talk about machine learning for a little bit. Machine learning is not what you think it is. Or at least trying to apply machine learning to finance is probably not what you think it is. So the first thing is that you got to remember that markets are fat-tailed and all of that sort of stuff. And machine learning methods are really good at doing things like regression. I mean, say you're wrong on this one, but we can go and pull up some data later. I think that you'll find that when they're made legal, that the abuse increases. Generally speaking, it's not always the case, but there are other factors involved, right? Have you ever met a junkie? Yeah, I was gonna say go talk to a couple of people that are on meth first, and then come back and tell me that if it was illegal, that there would be less of them. Okay. Anyways, so machine learning models are really good at regression, is one of the key things. Okay, so that's one of the first issues, is that like these machine learning models, like the LLMs and so forth, that are becoming so popular and that have been like so transformative and revolutionary, are not very effective in finance. There are other types of, there are certain types of machine learning and certain strategies and methods that do work. But these kinds of, like these LLMs, don't necessarily create profitable strategies per se. They're more likely, basically what they end up doing is they assume Gaussian distributions, and they're basically like automating overfitting the model to the market, right? But recently, Jane Street, which is basically the top quantitative place, I'm not sure they're like the biggest fund or what the deal is, but like in terms of like what is the most prestigious quant shop out there, is Jane Street. Jane Street has been buying up video cards. So apparently they have discovered some use for these machine learning models that we didn't have previously, that is encouraging them now to buy the video cards. So I don't know what it is, and maybe it's something that we could discover, but there's something going on there, essentially. Okay. Now the second thing is that the like algorithm, I guess you could say, is not the hard part. Most of these things, there's like some library out there that does the model for you, and you just have to get the data to it in the right format. And so the difficulty in using machine learning for trading is actually getting the data and transforming the data in a form that your machine learning algorithm can consume and actually create a usable result from. Okay. So if you want to go down the machine learning route, that's what you would be doing. And that world is like, you use NumPy and Pandas and Python in general to massage the data and pass it into your thing. So there is a framework called what was it called? It was Quantopian had created it. And that was kind of like the industry standard for backtesting in Python, and then they went kaput. But apparently, since they've gone kaput, that framework just became open source, and people have been using it. So that's why when I was talking about using Norgate, that's why it was to test momentum strategies. Washington Post, will I be able to read it, or will it? Nope, it will paywall me. So you're saying that Portugal's been having problems with it? So I was saying like the data is a little bit mixed. So I think that you could probably go and if you were using enough confirmation bias, you could probably find studies that say what you want them to say, that say that like decriminalizing drugs is generally good. But when you look at the totality of the data, it suggests that there are some drugs and problems that they create so much of a problem that it's just always best to have them banned. Right? It's a contradiction of the way that we want to look at the world, because we want to look at the world as like, God created the world and there's this solution for the way that you're supposed to be that is perfect and all of this. And so if we just set our rules up correctly and we have all of the right principles, then we'll create the right policies that will make everything perfect. This idea of utopia, that's what liberals believe. Conservatives don't believe it as much, but you still will see conservatives make this argument. But the argument that conservatives make is kind of like, well, if we just make everything absolutely free, then the free market will take care of everything, and then everything will be hunky-dory. And all of our problems that we have are because the free market is not actually free. That's the argument that libertarians will give you, right? When you start to investigate the world from an empirical perspective, you start to realize that the world just doesn't fit into these nice boxes. That, like, if you optimize on this one metric, it has negative impacts on this other metric. Just like I was saying earlier, if you want to have a market that is fair, that is going to negatively impact freedom and prosperity. It does. And these are like, you know, these are like physical realities that we have to contend with sometimes. That the world is just kind of complicated. So I would say, because I'm still a religious person, and I always said, well, you know, that would be nice if this would work or this would work. But I think that probably what's going to happen is we continue to stumble through things until God himself comes back to reign on the earth for 1,000 years. That's what we believe. Is that, you know, you'll have the second coming, and then there will be peace for 1,000 years, and then there will be like the end. Okay. So how would you have that? How are you going to have that kind of peace? Does that then God will have this perfect system that where everything works out perfectly all the time? I don't think so. I think that the perfect system has to account for randomness. I think that randomness is something built into the very nature of the universe. And there are things that will just happen randomly. And how do you account for that? And so the reality is the way that you get this system is each individual person has to understand the things that are relevant to what they're doing to make good decisions and to make moral correct decisions. And that will mean that sometimes bad things will happen and people will have tough decisions to make, and we just have to get them better at making those decisions, because something will always be broken and something will always not fit the way that it's supposed to, because that's just reality. Right? Once you divest yourself from this idea that everything is, everything is a little puzzle piece and it's all supposed to fit together correctly, and you just look at the empirical data and work based off of the empirical data, it's actually quite freeing, right? It doesn't all have to make sense. We just do what we know will work, and it won't match up, and we just have to deal with that when it doesn't. All things can be analyzed or predicted with enough necessary points of information. Okay, so explain this to me. I want you to come up with a number between 1 and 100. Okay? So you have the number in your mind now. Where did that number come from? Are you saying that if I put into a computer the sum of all of your experiences and everything that you've done in your life, that computer would be able to calculate with perfect accuracy what number you picked up? Just there in that moment? Where did that number come from? Is there like some cell in your brain where the number 36 is stored, and there's some algorithm that caused this brain electrical signal to go to here, to go to here, to go to here, and then it came down to 36, and that's where it came from? Because we've tried looking at that, and we don't know where it comes from. You as a person have the ability to randomly pick a number. How do you do that? Because we don't know how to get the computer to like truly pick a truly random number. What we do is we tell it, here's this really complicated formula that if you put a number into it, the number that comes out of it ends up being like really wild and difficult to predict. And then we just say like what time is it and what was the temperature of your CPU, and we calculate it and we come out with it. Right. It's not like a truly random number, but as a person, you just like pull this number out of thin air. Where did it come from? We don't know. Maybe it comes from the quantum realm, right? It goes into all this UFO stuff because they're saying that there's like interdimensional beings and stuff like that. But we know like things about quantum computers, right? When you do a quantum computer, you get like this probability distribution where you say, here's I set up my algorithm, and then you run it, and like you get a distribution of the way that the qubits come out, right? That suggests to me that there actually is, on a quantum level, a certain amount of pure randomness. And so you can't actually predict all things going out to the end of time with real certainty. If you had a computer that existed in another universe so that it had enough molecules to be able to do all of the calculations, right? And then you put in all of the correct rules and everything, would you be able to predict everything that's going to happen in this universe until the end of time? And I say no. I don't think that you can. I think that there is randomness in there that you can't. There's only a certain amount of stuff that you can actually correctly predict. But I don't have any way to know that. I'm just saying, there's a lot of people that are really, really confident that everything is deterministic, but I can show you don't actually know, right? Because if we knew that it was deterministic, then we'd be able to figure out when I ask you for a random number, where does it come from? Oh, so I missed a comment here. William, what is the minimum budget you think people should have when scalping the S&P micro? Oh, man. I think that to really have... So first of all, I don't really like scalping ES, to be honest with you, because it's just random. And I think that most of the success that people get out of it is just randomness. You're all a bunch of monkeys typing on typewriters, and eventually one of you types out Shakespeare, and then we all congratulate you. But I think that it's mostly random. And yes, it's really hard to find an actual real edge over in that market. Okay, but the volatility can really destroy you, right? And so I think that if I was gonna do it again, I would want to have more like 5,000 before I would feel confident, trading multiple micro contracts. So the leverage, that you're getting in ES compared to like the treasuries, right? Because in the treasuries, it's like a relatively major move is $10. That's pretty good, right? But I also think that PS has the right idea that trade on sim. All these people that say it needs to be live or it doesn't help you, they're full of shit. Just ignore them, okay? Like, trade it on sim and develop an actual edge on sim first. And once you've been doing it for a while, you've been doing it for years, and you're thinking about this every day for years, you'll have a pretty good idea of how it performs and how much risk you can take and how big of an account you'll need. Okay, it is time for me to get going. Tomorrow, we will talk about discretionary stocks. So think about what your favorite consumer discretionaries are right now. And we'll talk about it tomorrow. And maybe we'll get better trade tomorrow. It did not work out for me today. I guess I could have bought in here somewhere, but I'm finding this a little confusing. But hey, tomorrow, stay excellent, team.